You can run from it. You can try and avoid it. But eventually, it's gonna be kobolds. Welcome back to GM's Guide to Running Kingmaker. In this episode, I'm breaking down the Sootscale Caverns, where your heroes encounter a tribe of kobolds, uncover the power struggle between the chief and a newcomer named Tartuk, and decide whether this place is a dungeon to clear or a chance to make future allies. If you're enjoying this series, be sure to like the video, and if you want to follow along chapter by chapter, subscribe and check out the playlist. And leave me a comment about your campaign. Did your heroes try diplomacy first, or did it turn into a full cave sweep? The maps that I will be using in this video are used with permission from Racoozes, the creator of these awesome maps. These maps and many more are available on their website, which I will link in the description below. There are many top quality free maps as well as Foundry VTT modules available to make importing the maps a breeze. Subscribers to the Patreon will also get grid variant maps, high quality versions, and advanced Foundry integrations. The Sootscale Caverns aren't a natural kobold warren. It's actually an abandoned silver mine just north of the Shrike River. The ceilings are about 8 feet high, which the kobolds treat as a sign of incredible architectural achievement. As kobolds have dark vision, none of the caverns are lit unless otherwise specified. Let's review the situation the heroes will be walking into inside Sootscale Caverns. Lately, there has been tension and division within the Sootscale clan. A strange purple kobold named Tartuk has risen to power within the tribe recently. Having taken the role as spiritual leader, he uses their fear of a horned devil they call Old Sharptooth, along with illusionary magic to manipulate them, convincing them to make sacrifices to appease the Old Sharptooth and keep a curse at bay. Any kobold that actively questions him will be labeled as a bad kobold and angering Old Sharptooth, and therefore must be sacrificed. Officially, Chief Sootscale is still the leader, if only in practice. Tartuk is the one pulling the strings. He's allowed the chief to remain in a ceremonial role, but while Chief Sootscale is not as intelligent as this newcomer seems to be, he is still cunning and understands what's happening. He knows it's only a matter of time before Tartuk consolidates full control and removes him entirely. The rest of the tribe still recognizes Sootscale as chief, but they're intimidated by Tartuk. Their fear of Old Sharptooth, along with Tartuk's strange magic, keeps them from challenging him. What Chief Sootscale doesn't know, and the heroes won't know either, is that Tartuk isn't actually a kobold. He's Tartuccio, the gnome spy. He used a magical ritual to change his shape and infiltrate the tribe. His goal is to build an army of kobolds that he can eventually use to undermine the hero's claim to the stolen lands. The Sootscales have lived here in the stolen lands for decades, and these mines have served them well. From this defensible position, they've fought off bandits, mitflits, and trappers. They fished the Shrike River and have carved out a stable home. With the security of the mines and the resources of the river, they've become a mostly peaceful tribe that doesn't go looking for trouble, aside from their ongoing rivalry with the mitflits. Tartuk, however, is trying to change that. There are 3 main ways the heroes can end up at Sootscale Caverns. The path the adventurer intends for them to follow starts with Svetlana's Ring. This quest is presented after the events of Trouble at Oleg's. Once the heroes help defend the trading post, Oleg asks them to recover Svetlana's stolen wedding ring from the bandits responsible. When the heroes confront the bandits at the Thorn River camp, the bandits explain that the ring is no longer in their possession. It was stolen by gremlins who lived near the Old Sycamore. At the Old Sycamore, the heroes eventually encounter a captured kobold named Micmac. If they free him, he begs for help recovering a stolen holy statue that the mitflits have taken from the kobolds. If the heroes agree to help him and return the statue, Micmac leads them directly to Sootscale Caverns. That's the narrative route the adventure plans, but there's a second way this can happen. If the heroes don't rescue Micmac, they can still learn about the caverns from the mitflits' war room beneath the Old Sycamore. There's a map showing the location of the kobold lair, along with a note explaining that the shiny human ring is now in the possession of the kobolds. So even if Micmac never becomes an ally, the trail still points towards the caverns. And then there's the third option, sandbox exploration. If the heroes simply wander into Hex GB20 before engaging with this quest line or before reaching the trading post, they may still engage with the Sootscales. In the Hex entry on page 69, the caverns are described as well hidden, and the Hex has the hidden trait. The adventure does not specify the required check to find the entrance to the caverns, but based on the level of the zone, I would suggest a DC 18 perception check to find it. My advice here is to decide in advance how you want to handle it if your players reach this location early. Whether that means adding a perception check to locate the entrance, or simply keeping it undiscovered until the old Sycamore events point the heroes here. Area B1 is the main entrance to the Sootscale Caverns. The entrance sits on the side of a rocky hill, marked by an old weathered sign that reads Oaktop Silver Mine. This was once a Talden mining operation, but it was abandoned long ago. Just inside the cave are 3 pit traps that guard the approach. These pits can be covered by pulling down ropes from the ceiling and hooking them into iron rings on the floor, which allows the kobolds to safely move in and out of the cave without falling in. There's also a small stick cage near the entrance, holding a single sobbing miplet. The kobolds placed it here as a warning to their enemies under the old sycamore. If the heroes release the miplet, it doesn't offer thanks or information. It simply hisses and runs away. If they prevent it from fleeing, it attacks and fights to the death. Watching the entrance is a single kobold scout named Nakpik. Nakpik is expecting mitflets, not adventurers. When he spots the heroes, he's confused and hesitates for a moment, since he doesn't really have instructions on what to do with big folk. If the heroes are being accompanied by Micmac, he lets them in, and Micmac escorts the heroes to Area B4 to meet Chief Sootscale. If they are not being escorted by Micmac, he calls out and asks to talk instead of attacking. Nakpik explains that the kobold's holy statue was recently stolen by the Mitflets, and he invites the heroes inside to speak with their leader about a possible reward for retrieving it. If the heroes attack immediately, Nakpik runs deeper into the caves to warn the rest of the tribe. Otherwise, he escorts them inside, carefully guiding them around the pit traps and leading them deeper into the caverns. Area B2 is a narrow section of tunnel just inside the caverns, requiring small creatures to move through single file and medium creatures to squeeze through, which can make combat here pretty awkward. Just beyond the tunnel openings, there are 2 small alcoves on either side of the passage. 2 kobold scouts are waiting here in ambush, waiting for intruders to move through the narrow tunnels and then attack from both directions, trying to trap the enemies in the tight space while raising an alarm to warn the rest of the caverns. If the heroes were escorted by Nakpik or Micmac, these kobolds recognize that and don't attack. Perhaps the kobolds have a secret passphrase they shout out before entering the narrow section of the tunnel. Area B3 is the kobold's temple. The walls of this chamber are covered with crude drawings made of charcoal and blood, all depicting a looming, sharp-toothed reptilian figure. In the center of the room are 2 low stone tables, one of which is stained with blood from previous sacrifices. This is where the kobolds gather to worship their patron deity, Old Sharptooth. Since Tartuk took control of the tribe, he's allowed the kobolds to continue using this chamber for their worship. In fact, he actively encourages it. Tartuk uses the tribe's religious fear to maintain control, leading sacrifices here and reinforcing the idea that their god demands obedience. This is happening even though the tribe's sacred statue, which is central to their faith, has recently been stolen by the Mitflets. Interestingly, Old Sharptooth is actually real. What they're really venerating is a horned devil, and depending on how things unfold later in the campaign, that devil might eventually take notice of the attention and pay a visit to the stolen lands. At this point in the campaign, the heroes are very unlikely to realize what Old Sharptooth actually is. The adventure lists a DC 35 religion check to recognize the figure being depicted here is actually a horned devil, which is far beyond what most parties will be able to identify at this level. Area B4 is the main living space for the Sootscale kobolds. The chamber is scattered with beds, and a few smoldering fires. At this point in the story, the tribe has been hit pretty hard in their ongoing war with the Mitflits. The tribe is currently down to about 20 kobolds total, and many of them are out patrolling the surrounding hills looking for their enemies. So when the heroes arrive, this room only contains Chief Sootscale and 6 other kobolds. If the heroes were escorted by Nakpik or Mikmek, the chief will agree to talk, but does so behind the guard of the other kobolds. Otherwise, when Sootscale first sees the heroes, his instinct is to order an attack. However, there are a few ways this fight can be avoided. If the heroes show him the recovered statue of Old Sharptooth, if someone manages to demoralize him during the first round of combat, or if he's reduced to 6 hit points or fewer, in any of these cases, Sootscale backs down and begs for mercy. If he dies, the rest of the kobolds immediately surrender. Speaking with Sootscale, if the heroes do not yet have the statue, he explains that the Mitflits stole the tribe's sacred statue of Old Sharptooth. He believes that the tribe has been cursed because of this, and if the statue is not returned, all of them will turn yellow and die. He asks the heroes to retrieve it from the Mitflits, who live under the old sycamore tree to the west. But if the heroes already have the statue, Sootscale demands it. When the heroes hand it over, he holds it for a moment like he's making a difficult decision, and then suddenly smashes it on the ground, shattering it. The other kobolds are completely shocked. Sootscale believes that destroying the statue has broke the curse that Tartuk convinced the tribe was placed on them. With that fear gone, the chief thanks the heroes and asks them to come with him to kill the usurper. And he leads the heroes and his kobolds deeper into the caverns to confront Tartuk in the next area. Area B5 is Tartuk's chamber. This used to be Chief Sootscale's personal quarters, but after taking control of the tribe, Tartuccio, in the form of Tartuk, moved in and redecorated the space to make it look more mystical. The walls are covered in crude banners and made from blankets and animal hides, painted with strange symbols and icons. In the center of the room is a large iron cauldron filled with bubbling red liquid, which is mostly there for show. Exactly how this encounter plays out depends on how the heroes arrive. If they arrive without the statue of Old Sharptooth and also speak with Tartuk, he will try and manipulate them. He encourages them to retrieve the statue from the Mitflits and bring it to him instead of Chief Sootscale. He encourages the heroes to destroy their enemies under the old sycamore, possibly implying to the heroes that the Mitflits would be trouble to any new settlements in the area. If the heroes later return with the statue and bring it to Tartuk, he decides to accelerate his plans and orders the kobolds to kill the heroes as an offering to Old Sharptooth, which turns the encounter into a fight. If the heroes arrive with Chief Sootscale leading a rebellion, Tartuk quickly loses control of the situation and is forced to fight immediately. In combat, Tartuk is accompanied by 2 elite kobold warriors who remain loyal to him. If Tartuk is reduced to 10 hit points or fewer, he attempts to escape if possible. If he gets away, he can return later in the campaign as a recurring antagonist. If Tartuk is killed, his body reverts to the form of Tartuccio, revealing the deception to the rest of the tribe. If the heroes had already allied with Chief Sootscale, the kobolds are grateful for their help in removing the usurper. Otherwise, most of the tribe panics and abandons the caverns. There is also a pile of treasure in the eastern alcove. Most of it is worthless shiny objects collected by the kobolds, but mixed in are some coins, 2 sleep arrows, and a +1 weapon potency runestone. There's also a leather bag containing loot originally taken from the Thorn River bandits, including Svetlana's wedding ring, which the heroes may have been sent to recover. Tartuk's journal, written in Undercommon, can also be found here. It describes his plan to infiltrate the Sootscale tribe and eventually use them to gain control of the region. If the heroes manage to remove Tartuk from power, the Sootscale kobolds are left confused and frightened for a short time. If Chief Sootscale survives the events in the caverns, he personally thanks the heroes and acknowledges that the tribe now owes them a debt. If the chief was killed during the encounter, a kobold warrior named Gekkel steps forward and takes the name and position of Chief Sootscale, continuing the tribe's tradition of renaming themselves after their leader. In either case, the kobolds allow the heroes to take all of the treasure Tartuk had claimed for himself. They also promise to repay the heroes in the future as best they can. Later in the campaign, once the heroes establish their kingdom, the Sootscales' gratitude makes them receptive to the Pledge of Fealty kingdom activity. When the heroes attempt this activity with the Sootscales, the result improves by 1 degree of success. If the Sootscales become part of the kingdom, their mine functions as a worksite that produces 2 ore commodities each kingdom turn. However, integrating the kobolds into the kingdom isn't entirely smooth. They are still devil-worshipping kobolds with some fairly questionable habits. At the start of each kingdom turn, while the Sootscales remain part of the kingdom, the players must succeed a DC 11 flat check. On a failure, their influence increases either the kingdom's corruption or crime by 1. This continues until the heroes achieve a critical success when using the Send Diplomatic Envoy activity with the Sootscales, convincing them to curb their more troublesome behavior or possibly redirect their religious practices towards a less dangerous deity. Recruiting the Sootscale kobolds into the kingdom can also lead to consequences later in the campaign. The special kingdom event, Old Sharptooth Comes Calling, detailed on page 131, outlines something that may happen once the characters reach around level 13. The horned devil the Sootscales worship as Old Sharptooth is a real creature named Zazrael. At some point, word of the kobold's worship reaches him, and he travels to the Stolen Lands to investigate the rumors of a cult using his name. This event only really makes sense if the Sootscales have been integrated into the hero's kingdom. It also shouldn't occur until the heroes are at least level 13, since the situation can escalate into a severe encounter with the Horned Devil himself. And that wraps up how the Sootscale Caverns are written in the adventure. But I'd like to take a moment to make a couple suggestions to make this part of the adventure feel a little more memorable and impactful. The first issue I ran into is the map itself. The version provided in the adventure is a bit small. These caverns are supposed to have housed a tribe of over 20 kobolds, but the layout really doesn't support that. There just isn't enough space for the tribe to realistically live there. It also makes the confrontation with Tartuk feel a bit anticlimactic. His chamber is basically right around the corner from the main common room, and barely large enough for Tartuk and his 2 elite kobolds. One way to improve this is to use a larger map and spread the areas out with additional tunnels. Since the caverns are supposed to be an old abandoned mine, you can add extra side passages and branches that make the place feel more like a real network of mining tunnels. Expanding the map also helps address another issue with the final confrontation. If the heroes arrive with Chief Sootscale, Micmac, and several kobold warriors, ready to overthrow Tartuk, the fight in the published map becomes extremely cramped and very one-sided. There simply isn't enough space for that many creatures in the encounter area. With a larger map, you can stage this as a more dynamic confrontation. Chief Sootscale and his loyal kobolds can break off to deal with the members of the tribe who followed Tartuk, while the heroes push forward to confront Tartuk and his 2 elite guards directly. You can run this in a way similar to the final showdown with the Black Tears back in Chapter 1, where the larger battle is happening around the heroes, but the focus of the encounter remains on their direct confrontation with Tartuk, making the uprising within the tribe feel larger and more dramatic. I will leave a link to these reimagined maps I created for this encounter. The download includes image files, a Foundry import file, and the original Dungeon Draft files. If you plan to open or edit the Dungeon Draft version, note that it uses Forgotten Adventures assets, so those packs will need to be installed for the map to load correctly. Lastly, Chapter 1 sets up Tartuccio as a spy whose entire goal is to undermine the hero's claim to the Stolen Lands. But after that introduction, he basically disappears until this moment in the caverns. And unless the heroes specifically piece it together, after the fight, they might never realize that Tartuk was Tartuccio after all, and that feels like a bit of a missed opportunity. One option is to let Tartuccio show up again earlier in the story. Maybe he appears at Oleg's trading post, acting antagonistic towards the heroes, or perhaps eventually feeding them bad information meant to steer them into an ambush by the Thorn River bandits or the Stag Lord's men. The adventure also suggests that Tartuccio might escape to cause trouble for the heroes later on, but if he escapes while still disguised, the heroes won't know who he really was. You can fix that by tying his disguise directly to the cauldron in his chamber. Treat it as a part of the ritual that transformed Tartuccio into Tartuk, and have it also sustain the illusion and protect him during the fight. After a couple of rounds, you should allow the heroes to attempt a recall knowledge check using Arcana or Occultism to notice that something about the cauldron is sustaining Tartuk's magic. If they figure it out and knock the cauldron over, the illusion collapses and the protection fades, revealing Tartuccio's true form. If they miss this clue, you can still have an easy fallback. As the larger battle between the kobolds spills deeper into the caverns, the chaos could jostle the cauldron and knock it over anyway, briefly revealing Tartuccio beneath the disguise. At that point, he can panic, pull out some strange talisman made from green hair or bearing the symbol of the Lantern King, and escape with a spell like Dimension Door or Teleport. The kobolds witnessing this suddenly realize that Tartuk was never one of them at all, and that they've been manipulated the entire time. And that wraps up this video on Sootscale Caverns. On the surface, it's a small dungeon crawl, but there's a lot more going on beneath it. A manipulated tribe, a disguised rival working behind the scenes, and an opportunity for the heroes to shape the region through diplomacy instead of just combat. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and leave me a comment and let me know about your campaign, or any other questions you have about Kingmaker.